Hi, this is Josh, and in today's video, we're going to go through the infotainment system of the INEOS Grenadier. The settings, the menus, and the things that you won't want to miss when you get your Grenadier, because there's some settings that are very well hidden that you're not going to want to miss. And also, stay to the end of the video and you'll see some information about the premium audio system that I learned. So let's get into it. Okay, so when you first turn on the car, the system goes through warnings check, and it checks all the sensors. I'm wearing my seatbelt because otherwise the sensor will constantly annoy us during this demonstration. So I'm going to leave my seatbelt, stay quietly in my seat. So the menu has these choices, and it's the settings that you're going to be most interested in going to. First you have general settings, where you can choose the language from a list. And of course you can always just hit the back button. Display settings. This is currently at 50% brightness. Make it 70%. The info areas. Over here you can choose the things that will rotate through: average fuel, average speed, current fuel consumption, time driven, and distance driven. So if I don't care about seeing distance driven, I can remove that, and then it comes out from this list right here. And then these things rotate through when you push the button on the side of the turning signal stalk. So it's kind of like the old trip computers that you see in cars. But this little button is activated at the end of the light turning signal stalk. And Info 4 is where you see this right here, where it says audio source, bearing, the date, travel time, the odometer, but the odometer is actually down here all the time, or altitude. And it's interesting, if you look here, my altitude shows minus 81 feet below sea level, which is interesting. I live right close to the ocean, and I'm near the San Diego harbor, and I'm definitely not below sea level. I'm in a subterranean garage, but I think this needs to be recalibrated, and I'm going to have a chat with my dealer about getting that corrected. So that's Info 4. So actually I'm going to set that to my audio source. You'll see why in just a few minutes. And then that's just a reset for the display settings. Vehicle functions, instrument illumination, currently this is 70%. Central locking system. You can have drive-away locking, which is as soon as you start moving forward, the locks will all lock. Selective unlocking, your choices are to unlock the driver's door or all doors. And I believe that is when you push the button that's right by the driver's door. If you push it once, or twice. If I push it, if I set this to just driver's door and I lock the car, so I'm going to leave that at all doors. Park front distance control, and I'll go into more detail on that in a little bit, but that basically enables or disables the front distance, park distance control. I don't know why you would want to turn it off, but I think if you're off-roading, some of the off-roading systems automatically will shut that off. And then the ADAS, which some people call the nanny system, that's the autonomous emergency braking, which I've gotten a warning light saying it was deactivated once or twice. Lane departure warning, the intelligent speed assist, this is the controversial one. And normally when you get into the car, if you go, the speed limit will show based on GPS and satellite in this little area right here. And if you go 1 mile over that number, it will make this tick tick sound. I'll try to get a recording and put it at the end here or insert it. And so a lot of times people go in and just turn that off. Now the annoying thing about it is every time you shut the car off, it goes back on. So when you turn the car on, it's defaulted to on. And so a lot of people will choose to set a favorite button, which is down by the shifter, that you can set to take you directly to this screen, so that every time you drive off, you can quickly just take the overspeed warning and turn it off. I turned the speed limit info off once, and it actually gave me other warnings saying that lane departure warning and a few other things were not functioning, and I'm not sure if that was a little bug in my car or if that was because I disabled a couple of these features. So if I scroll, does this have a scroll? This does not have a scroll. Okay. And then driver drowsiness warning. I'm not certain exactly what comprises the driver drowsiness warning that has to do with your driving behavior or your speed fluctuation. And then of course you can deactivate all of the systems. And of course I'm sure this probably has a severe warning saying, yes, do I want to do this? Please confirm. And if I do it, it says all sorts of warning lights go off. Automatic emergency braking is not available, front distance, and so forth. So it gets mad. So back to, whoop, no. Vehicle functions, acoustic settings. Now this is interesting. I have a Fieldmaster edition, and it's got the premium audio. And what I found when I got my car, and this is one of the bugs that was in it when I got it, is that the subwoofer was not turned on. First I had to find the subwoofer, and then I had to recognize that it was not turned on, because the audio quality left a lot to be desired in the sound. And so I found that I just turned on the switch, and poof, I had bass and a lot of sound, because I was playing around with this equalizer, because you can set some predetermined profiles. I was using a predetermined profile and trying to compensate for the lack of robustness in the sound, basically. And it just didn't seem to really make a difference. So I'm going to do a little separate section on the subwoofer, because it's in the back seat, underneath the seat, and it requires a little tool. And so I'm going to show you where that's at in just a moment. Then volume settings. These are volume settings for the default, like how loud you want the music to be playing when you first get in the car, vehicle start, volume minimization, and I believe that's when it drops down so that you can hear, for instance, an instruction. And then speed dependent volume. As you go faster and as you learn your Grenadier, you're going to find that once you get about 60 miles an hour, you start to really hear wind noise. And I'm not sure yet, because it's new for me, where it's coming from. And so I don't know if, putting a cover inside the skylights will make a difference, or if it's just the wind mirrors, or the fact that the windscreen is really flat. A lot of different things can cause the wind noise, but you definitely start to notice it, especially once you get over 60. So what happens with this setting is, as you go faster, the volume will increase. And so you can set that, and you can set how much of an increase you want it to have. And then increase notification volume, same thing, so that you'll hear it, overhear it, you'll hear it over the wind noise or the vehicle sound. And then the PDC sounds, I turned this down. It was set to default of like 7, and quite frankly, there's a lot of sounds this car makes, and I'm still figuring out what sound equals what kind of an issue. If it's a warning, if it's a critical warning. It's like the Gong Show at first, the very first time I drove it. And the clicks and the gongs and the tings takes a little getting used to, and I'm happy to turn it down so that it's just helping assist me, but not just slamming me in the side of the head with that information. So that's the PDC sound. I've set it to 2, and then input sound is basically what you're hearing with my finger. So that you because every time you turn the volume knob, it makes that little sound. And you notice now that I disabled the setting. Until I turn this car off and turn it back on, I'm going to get this AEB not available warning. So it's some of those things that you tend to see a little too much information, and because this is all new, it takes a little getting used to. What am I looking at? What am I seeing? Where should I be looking? And in a pretty quick time, you get used to the fact that this side is like the speedometer, which you would expect to be over here. It's got the miles per hour. This is the tachometer. This always tells you what gear you're in. That's your fuel gauge and your temperature. It's pretty straightforward. And then warnings will show up in place of this information. That's the odometer. It's like there's a warning right there. And so things like that will pop up over here. This is where you have menus. Like I'll scroll a little more. Acoustic settings, communication. Device list is for Bluetooth. And so, you know, you can connect multiple phones. I have an iPhone connected to it, and so I'm using CarPlay. You can, I have to investigate the Wi-Fi hotspot if it's my Wi-Fi hotspot, because there is an SOS. Is there? I take that back. There is not an SOS button. Some of the European versions have an SOS button. And so that would imply that there was cellular service within the car. It doesn't look like we've got that in the United States, and I'm fine with that because I have plenty of plans and subscriptions and I don't need another one. But I'll have to look to see what this is, and maybe I'll drop a note on the screen as this is playing. And then there's a reset for communication settings. After Pathfinder, you can actually load maps and paths for off-roading. This is not something that I'll be doing because I'm a city boy, but you can actually create paths in your car, save it to a thumb drive, or vice versa. You can create a path externally and import it into your car. And that's what this Pathfinder file transfer is for. And then of course, SiriusXM in the US, the cars come with a 90-day SiriusXM subscription. And then of course, they'll pitch you for paying a monthly fee. I've had Sirius in cars for years, 20 years. And they used to sell a lifetime, which was a good value if you keep your cars for a while, but they stopped doing that. And now I use streaming more than I use in car, because I don't know if this is nationwide, but in California, there are certain places where Sirius will just drop out, and you're and it's not necessarily a freeway underpass. You can be out in the clear, but if you're listening to Howard Stern or some talk radio or news and the signal drops out, it's really frustrating. But if you're streaming it, it doesn't drop out. So I already have Sirius subscription on a radio, and I have the streaming, so I'll probably be using SiriusXM on my Apple CarPlay instead of the radio that's built into the Grenadier. And frankly, it's just as easy to access in this car. But here are your settings, and it tells you, about your subscription and so forth. So that's pretty much it for settings. Apple CarPlay, if you're familiar with it, it's right here, and it's pretty responsive. And of course, favorites, like there's my Sirius radio right there. This INEOS button is actually what you tap to go back into the car's functions. And so it's easy to get back and forth. And then audio, there's a couple little tricks about audio, and I'm going to turn the volume down so that there is no copyright issue. These little dots over here, at first I'm like, what is that? Well, this is the Apple CarPlay Sirius radio, and you tap that little teeny dot, and then this is the FM radio, and then this is the SiriusXM that's in the car. Oop, I skipped one. That's Bluetooth. So if you're just streaming from a Bluetooth device, and then this one is from a USB. And you might not know this, but inside the storage bin in the center, there's a USB-C port and a USB-A port. And those, at least the USB-A port, you actually can stick a USB A drive that has MP3s on it, and you can play those in your car through that by choosing this menu. But be on the lookout for these little dots, because they indicate that there's a sub menu or there's something else for you to find. And so it's one of those things that at first I'm like, that's way over there, I'm driving, it's not a big button, so it's a little annoying, but at least now you know what it is. So the radio, I have to adjust the quality of the sound to see if the premium audio is any bit premium, but it auto selects and scans for radio stations in your area when you first get the car, and then I set some presets, and it was actually pretty easy and straightforward. The phone, it automatically goes to my Apple phone list, and it's pretty well integrated. I haven't had difficulty. I've only made a couple of phone calls so far in the car, and it's on speaker, and I didn't have trouble hearing, and I didn't have trouble with the people hearing me. So that was all good. I don't have any other feedback for that. Off-road is actually the off-road system, and it takes it a minute to load, but you basically have a lot of different menus that are geared for people that do off-roading, and this is a whole separate topic, and I would recommend that you go to the user's guide to get more information, because I'm not a big off-roader and I wouldn't be able to tell you too much about what we're seeing here, except, I mean, some of these temperature things, it'll tell you your tire pressure and some of your gearbox and transfer case temperatures. So it's information and it's interesting, but it's video game to me, quite frankly. Okay, battery temperature, state of charge. You go to home, and that just shows me what's currently on the audio. It says it's on Apple CarPlay. So you know that that's the Apple CarPlay Sirius Radio that's playing, and not the car's radio Sirius Radio. Okay, one last thing that I wanted to share with you before we end is setting your favorite button in the console down below. It's called the CCI, or Custom Control Interface, and under General Settings, here you see you can set the clockwise or counterclockwise rotation of the knob down below, but down below here you'll see CCI Favorite, and then you have a choice of almost every menu in the interface in the infotainment system, and mine is currently set to ISA, which is the Intelligent Speed Assist. And what that does is when I push the favorite button, it takes me directly to that screen where I can deactivate the Intelligent Speed Assist warning. And you'll probably want to set this up as soon as you get your Grenadier. It's one of the most annoying things, in my opinion. It's helpful, but at the same time, it's overload. It's overkill, and I think that they need to go back to the drawing board on how they implement it. Because one warning, great. Several tick, tick, tick warnings, not great. So anyway, by setting your favorite button, you can go and make this change instantly when you first drive off, because pushing your way around the menus when you're driving is not the best plan. So setting that, we'll go back, and that can be found again under the General menu. And be sure that when you go to these menus to always scroll to see if there's more down below, because there are a few things that will be hidden that you might not otherwise find if you don't scroll. So that's pretty much this system. It's interesting, the volume button is way down at the bottom near the shifter, and there's a mute button that you can just push in and out that will, but of course everything you do in this car makes a sound. You hear that sound? Turn the volume up, you hear little sounds. You turn the volume down, little sounds. So there are a lot of sounds in this car, and that's taking a little getting used to. That's why going in here and changing the settings so that the feedback from the car isn't quite so loud will make it just a little less annoying, or maybe a little more pleasant, depending on how you're looking at it. So that's the main menu screen, let's go take a look at the subwoofer, and let me show you that, because it's interesting. There's little settings, and it's somewhat documented, but not really. I mean, I found a manual. There was actually a manual that came with my owner's guide, because it's a JBL subwoofer that they installed. It's an aftermarket, just like the engines of BMW. The subwoofer is a JBL, and it's got little areas to set the gain and the bass and so forth, and it definitely needs to be adjusted. So I'll show you that right now. First, you notice in the rear seat that the seat, it actually just pulls up, and you have to lift up these seat belts to get the seat to be able to come out of the way. I'm trying to do this with one hand. I'm going to set the camera down just a moment. There. So once I open this up, you see down in here there's this subwoofer, and it's got a JBL name on it. And then if you come to the other side, and I'm not sure if I'm actually seeing this, let's see if I can, I'm not sure if this is just too close. There are settings where it connects, and when I got my subwoofer, the on-off switch was not on. Just this little switch was turned off. So I was getting no subwoofer or bass whatsoever. And so the first thing I did was I found this, and I turned it on. And maybe you heard me talk in some previous videos that if you have the auxiliary power, that battery goes in this area, so you can't have the premium sound. And so that's why the subwoofer lives in this space, or a battery if you have the auxiliary power. But then when I came into this space to actually look for the subwoofer, that's when I discovered that there's little settings here for gain and then the pass filter. And so I'm going to get a MP3 that I can actually adjust, because Sirius Radio isn't probably the barometer that I want to use for testing the audio quality. And instead I want to have something that's got definite bass and definite treble, so that I can do a better job at adjusting this. But you basically take a little teeny screwdriver and you twist to set these so that you can balance the bass the way that you want it to be to your preference. But the fact that this is here is something you should know, because it wasn't set up by my INEOS dealer. It wasn't set up at the factory. In fact, it was even turned off. So just know that this is there, and it's something that you're going to want to go and set and make a change to, because otherwise it's not very premium. Okay, so we've adjusted this a little bit. I'm going to give it a test with some music that I can't play because of copyright issues, and we'll see if that made an improvement. I think it did. And now it's time to just close up the seat, and when you do, you have to kind of wiggle the seat belts back into place, and they just tuck down, and there you go. So I think that's it for today. That's just a little run through of the menu system, and then also a little boost for the subwoofer, and that's something to pay attention to. Don't throw out the stereo when you first get your Grenadier. Make sure that it's working properly as it's intended before you go in a hurry to replace it. So anyway, subscribe if you're interested in more content like this. I appreciate all the comments that I've been receiving, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.